This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there, Chef Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to a very special Sports Catastrophe. Not really on this day, but basically it is a on this planet Earth, if you will. So anyway, as the Summer Olympics are coming tomorrow, that being July 23rd, I decided to do a retrospective of the Summer Olympics and all that. With the Winter Olympics coming next February, hopefully in February, it doesn't get delayed for another year. It probably might, but they're going to have a little issue, all that. But anyway, I decided to basically talk about each Summer Olympics as it had happened. So as everyone should know, the Olympics were a Greek festival and all that. That basically city-states like Athena and Sparta would send their best athletes in many competitions such as pancration, which is basically wrestling with no rules and all that, chariot racing, swimming, and running. And yes, of course, as everyone should know, the athletes all competed naked at times. But then basically, once Christianity took over in 300 AD or something like that, the Olympics were basically banished to the underground and all that. And then by 1896, Baron Pierre de Coubertin decided we need to have an international sports festival. So he did. So that's when the first modern Olympics happened in 1896 in Athens, Greece. Of course, we are headed for the 32nd Olympiad. So Tokyo hosts the 32nd Olympics and all that. So the IOC basically gives a lot of traditions, all that. The first Olympics had 42 competitions with 250 male competitors, no females allowed, from 14 nations. And now in 2016, there's 306 events with 11,238 competitors, almost the same, 6,100 men, 55,000 women from 206 nations. The Summer Olympics have been hosted on every continent except for Africa and Antarctica. The country with the most Summer Olympics has been the United States, 1904, 1932, 1984, 1996. Japan, this is Japan's second time in the Summer Olympics. 64 was the other time. But England's had it 3 times. Well, Great Britain has had it 3 times, 1908, 1948, and 2012. Twice in Greece, twice in France, twice in Germany and Australia, and once each in Sweden, Belgium, Holland, Finland, Italy, Mexico, Canada, the Soviet Union, South Korea, Spain, China, and Brazil. So basically, Tokyo will get their second Olympics. It's important to note that the 2024 Olympics are basically going to be held in Paris. The last time they hosted the Olympics, France did 1924, so it's 100 years later. Los Angeles will get their third Olympics in 2028 after hosting the Olympics in 32 and 84. Only 5 countries have been to every Summer Olympic Games. And no, the Americans, not even the Americans. It's Australia, France, Great Britain, Greece, and Switzerland. Surprised that Switzerland, of all countries, would actually participate in every Summer Olympic Games, because Switzerland's not really a Summer Olympic nation. So basically, the all-time Olympic medal and all that, it's going to be a lot happening. So the massive, the overall tally is the Americans with over 2,500 medals, Russia second with 1,500, and of course that includes the Soviet Union. Third place is Germany, including East Germany, 1,300. Then it's Great Britain, China, France, Italy, Hungary, surprisingly is 8th, Australia, and Sweden. Oh, they're doing it this based on gold medals. Yeah, there's a discrepancy. And they sometimes do it based on gold medals instead of just complete ranked medals. Okay, here we go. I'll get you the stuff. United States #1 with 2,500. Then the Soviets with over 1,000. Oh, but they don't add Russia to it. Oh, that sucks. Oh, it's totally sucky ducky duckies. Yeah, a lot of things are done. Needless to say, Canada is 20th on the all-time gold medal list for summer games. Oops, forward. All right. So, the early years. In 1896, Athens, because they were the spiritual home for the Olympics, got to host the first event. 245 competitors were involved, but 200 of them were Greek. So basically, not many countries were represented. Female athletes were not allowed to compete. So anyway, the first Summer Olympics happened from April 6th to 15th, 1896. Over 100,000 people actually attended the opening ceremony. The Americans actually finished with the most champions. 11 Americans won gold medals, if you will. Well, not officially gold medals, but you know what I mean. First is 10 from Greece. So anyway, it was a great success and all that. They had Panathinaikos Stadium, which was the first big stadium in the modern world. Their marathon winner was Spiridon Lewis, who was a water carrier who actually won in just under 3 hours. And then a German wrestler by the name of Karl Schumann, who won 4 gold medals. It was amazing. People thought Athens should be the permanent Olympic host city, but the IOC basically decided to rotate games around the world. The second one was the 1900 Summer Olympics in Paris. Many athletes competed, including 20 women who competed in croquet, golf, sailing, and tennis. The games were actually integrated with the World's Fair and lasted 5 months. Not many events were advertised because so basically they had the events throughout the World's Fair instead of like a 2-week period. So basically, the third Olympics was the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis. But the Americans and Canadians, for that matter, got a lot more medals because of the fact that the difficulty to get to St. Louis, remember, plane travel wasn't really there in 1904, led to a lot of North Americans being there and all that. In 1906, Athens decided to host the 10th anniversary of the modern games. The IOC does not recognize these games as being official Olympic games. Historians do, but no. The 1906 Athens Games were supposed to be alternating set of games, but no, it didn't work. 1908, London hosted the Olympics, which was the first marathon in its distance of 42.195 kilometers, or 26 miles, 385 yards. So the first Olympic marathon was 40 kilometers. And the new marathon distance was chosen so that the race would finish at the British royal family's royal box. So anyway, the marathon was there in 1908. Great Britain would win over 146 medals. #1, and would have their best result to this day. Well, obviously, home country advantage, what I expect. It also hosted an amazing event at the end of the 1908 marathon, where the Italian runner Dorano Pietri actually won. Well, he was first to enter the stadium, but he was in distress, and he was helped over the finish line. Unfortunately, he was disqualified. But Queen Alexandra gave Pietri a silver cup, all that. So the games continued to grow and moved to Stockholm in 1912. The major event in 1912 in Stockholm was the great Jim Thorpe for his decathlon and pentathlon. The decathlon is when you compete in 10 events, pentathlon is when you compete in 7 events. So basically, Thorpe looked good and all that. Unfortunately, Thorpe was stripped of his gold medals because he played some minor league baseball and all that for money, and basically ruined the amateurism thing. Now, many people were caught being professionals instead of amateurs, which was the Olympics was supposed to be all about. But the problem with Jim Thorpe's 1912 thing was that the complaint came in 6 months after he won the gold medals, and there was supposed to be a 30-day thing. And a lot of people said that future IOC president Avery Brundage actually complained because of him being jealous of Jim Thorpe for two reasons. Number one, Thorpe was better than him in the events, and Brundage did compete in the pentathlon and didn't do so well. And number two is because the color of his skin, because of him being an American Indian and all that. Brundage would deny it, but basically his amateurism and his kind of Nazi sympathism ruined things. However, Thorpe's family would get the gold medals back, although it was 7 decades later in 1983. So anyway, that wasn't too good. And then the war just had to come in. World War I, the war to end all wars, which was supposed to be what it is, but it wasn't. Anyway, the 1916 Summer Olympics were supposed to be in Berlin. Now remember, this is pre-Hitler. Germany was evil, but not that evil. So anyway, Germany botched it. And of course, World War I. So the next one went into Antwerp, into Belgium. It was subdued. And I'm surprised Belgium hosted it because they were war ravaged. But people came out in numbers to the Antwerp Games. The Antwerp Games were also notable for having ice hockey competitions, which was strange because you don't want hockey in the Summer Olympics. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, regardless, in 1924, they went to Paris. Got over 3,000 competitors, but one stood the test of time. The flying Finn, Pavel Nurmi, who was a great Finnish runner, won 3 team gold medals in running and the individual 1,500 and 5,000 meter runs. He did the latter two on the same day. Basically, the organizers, I think, were trying to make Nurmi nervous or something like that, scheduling those 2 finals on the same day. But he won both of them. That's amazing. In 1928, Amsterdam got the Summer Olympics, and it allowed females to compete at track and field events, which was amazing and all that. And for the first time, sponsorship happened as the Coca-Cola company decided to sponsor part of the games. So basically, it went from amateurism to commercialism, kind of. So anyway, however, one of the biggest things about the 1928 Amsterdam Olympics was that for a while after 28, they banned women from racing in races longer than 400 meters till 1948. Anyway, in 1932, Los Angeles hosted the Olympics for the first time, but the Great Depression ruined everything in a sense. Not too many competitors competed. The Americans dominated again, as normal. In 1936, Berlin got the Olympics. Now, they were given the Olympics before Hitler took power in 1933. So basically, the German government said that it's a golden opportunity to promote their ideology. And the Nazi Party commissioned a filmmaker, Leni Riefenstahl, to film the games. And the 1936 Olympic Games being, the filmmaker, Olympia, was one of the best Olympics ever. It was, one of the best documentaries ever. The 1938 film was super important to how things would be filmed and all that. So that was just shocking. So yeah, it was amazing. There was two parts to it: Festival of Nations and Festival of Beauty. It was very documentary. It made advanced motion picture techniques. It was groundbreaking. Unusual camera angles, smash cuts, extreme close-ups, and placing tracking shot rails within the bleachers. It was controversial due to its political context, but nonetheless, it was even part of Time Magazine's all-time movies and all that. And Olympia set the precedence for future films documenting the Olympic Games. Even though there was only 6 camera positions on the stadium field, Riefenstahl set up cameras in many places as she could, including the grandstands. She attached automatic cameras to balloons, and including instructions to return the film to her. And she said automatic was in boats during practice runs. She even had an underwater camera. That's basically amazing and all that. It's like fantastic. So yeah, it was enthusiastic. I mean, it was amazing. Of course, we all know about the 1936 Olympics being Hitler's regime and all that. But the worst part was that the non-Aryan athletes, aka the non-German white blonde athletes, were being shown up constantly by the others, such as Jesse Owens' 4 gold medals and all that. The 1936 Berlin Games did give us something nice, the torch relay. So anyway, now Hitler was told that he had to congratulate every winner or no winners at all. And they said that, Hitler snubbed Jesse Owens, but he had to because it was the fact that if he didn't congratulate any winners, then basically he has to congratulate all winners. Now, a lot of people said that Owens was treated worse by the American government when he came home. Well, yeah, you know how the racism is. In 1940, Tokyo was about to get the Olympics, but unfortunately they had their own issues with the war with China and being a member of the Axis of Evil in World War II. London also was going to get the Olympics in 1944, but because of World War II, it was canceled. But they were given the first games after the end of the war in 1948. So the first post-war games happened. Germany and Japan were basically booted for their roles of being evil and all that. And that was the Olympics of one Fanny Blankers Cohen, who basically made women athletes personally good. And in 1952, Helsinki got the games. A lot of people were like, how the heck did that happen? I mean, the 52 games in Finland? Really? But yeah, it was fun and all that. Russia would compete for the first time and basically became dominant and all that because of the state-sponsored full-time amateur athlete thing. The Russians would enter a team of athletes who were basically students and soldiers and working in a profession. But basically, they're reality paid by the state to train on a full-time basis, violating amateur rules. And at the 52 games in Helsinki, Emil Satopak from Czechoslovakia was a legend. He won the 10,000 and 5,000 meter races and then entered the marathon for some strange reason. Satopak shocked everyone by winning the marathon by 2 minutes. And then the Olympics went to the Southern Hemisphere for the first time, 1956 Melbourne. As Australia got to have it. There were some great athletes. The Australians, like Don Fraser and the Australian swimming team, doing well. However, there were a couple of bad things. The equestrian events were held in Sweden because of the strict quarantine laws in Australia. And also, the 56 Melbourne Games were also held during a bad time between the Hungarians and Soviet Union, as the Soviets were basically trying to squash Hungarian independence and all that. So basically, Hungary and Soviets ended up bumping each other in a water polo match, and basically it was a terrible fight between the two nations and all that. Hungary easily won because they're a good water polo team, but man, that was just pathetic and all that. Many famous Hungarians had to defect to Australia and to other countries because of the Soviets. It's stupid. 1960, the Olympics were in Rome, so great city and all that. There were some great performers in 1960. Willa Rudolph, who won 3 gold medals despite the fact she was diagnosed with polio. She had polio as a kid. Muhammad Ali, remember him? He won the heavyweight boxing gold medal. All that. Ali's gold medal, he would actually throw away in disgust because he was review service in a restaurant in Louisville, Kentucky. But he got his own back in 96. Like they gave him a replica. I don't know why it took 36 years for that. But one of the big stories from the Rome Olympics was Abibi Bikila of Ethiopia running in the marathon. Because he didn't like the shoes that his company gave him, he had to run the marathon barefoot and all that. It wasn't some kind of statement. It was like, he didn't like the shoes, which was worse because Rome had a lot of cobblestone streets that could hurt his foot. So basically, you know, that just sucked. But he won the marathon and the subsequent one in Tokyo '64, which actually happened. It was the modern age of telecommunications, the first to be broadcast worldwide on TV because of communication satellites and the fact that Japan was ahead of its time in communications. Judo was a official sport and all that, which is great for Tokyo and all that. They like judo, the martial arts in Japan. Too bad sumo is in the Olympics. I would like to see that. But yeah, the 64 games were big. Tokyo had to hinge a lot on it because remember, Japan was 2 decades removed from being evil in the war. So yeah, they did pretty good for themselves. The 1968 Olympics were in Mexico City, but unfortunately, Mexico City is where high altitude is. And basically, it sapped a lot of athletes' strength and all that. So, yeah. However, 68 was known for a couple of massive protests and all that. Oh, well, it was also known for Canada shocking the world by winning the team jumping competition in equestrian. But anyway, as I said in the previous, birthday boy, at the 200-meter race, black athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos took a stand for civil rights by raising their black gloved fists and wearing black loose shoes. The IOC basically banned them, and they were not welcomed by the American envoy. Vera Kozlovska, in protest to the 1968 Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, the Velvet Revolution. No, the Velvet Spring. And the controversial decisions by the judges on the balance beam and floor that ruined her medals turned her head down and away from the Soviet flag when the anthem was played during the medal ceremony. She was a heroine of the Czech people, but an outcast by the Soviet dominant government. Well, kind of like Nadia Comaneci when I talked about her a couple days ago. Anyway, Munich would host the 1972 games, and Germany again was banking on the fact that, they were peacetime and all that. Unfortunately, terrorism would ruin the day. But it wasn't Germany's fault. So anyway, Black September happened. A Palestinian terrorist group invaded the Olympic Village and broke into the apartment of the Israeli delegation. They killed 2 Israelis and held 9 others as hostages. And the terrorists demanded that Israel release prisoners and all that. The government refused the demand, and basically there was a massive standoff. Eventually, the captors were offered safe passage and taken to an airport, where they were ambushed by German security forces. However, because of the ambush, Black September decided to blow up the stuff with the 9 hostages and all that. There was a lot of debate, but the games had to continue. Avery Brundage basically said that, we have 1 day of stuff, and then basically we got to get back together and all that. Brundage was basically at the end of his ILC rope that saw him basically become a dick, especially to black athletes. But anyway, during the Olympics, Mark Spitz put up 7 gold medals in one game. Lasse Viren of Finland won back-to-back golds in the 5,000 and 10,000 meters. And Olga Korbut, who was a great Soviet gymnastics star before Comaneci took over. Thankfully, though, Montreal did not have to suffer through tragedy in 1976 when they hosted the Games. It was nice to see Canada getting the Olympics. Montreal, unfortunately, suffered the poor plight of bad planning and fraud led to the Games far exceeding the budget. The Montreal Games were actually the most expensive in Olympic history, adjusted for inflation. before the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics, costing about $5 billion at the time. And then it was equivalent to $22 billion in today's dollars. Wow. For a time, it seemed that the Olympics might not be a financial proposition. Basically, contractors skimmed large sums of money from all levels of contracts because they were part of the mafia and profited from the substitution of cheaper building materials of lesser quality. Led to a lot of things. So, yeah, you got Nadia Comaneci, Lassie Farron doing pretty well. But and a Canadian high jumper by the name of Greg Joy, who brought Canada joy, despite the fact he took silver in the 76 Olympics and saw for the first time in history the host country not even get one freaking gold medal, which was kind of sucky. But basically, yeah, he took silver. He beat Dwight Stones, who basically pissed off French Canada. Anyhow, yeah, Montreal's poor planning because the big O, like Olympic Stadium, was a burden and all that to a lot of people. However, there were some heroes. Bruce Jenner winning the decathlon and was a national hero. And you know what happened to Bruce. I don't have to tell you. But there were a lot of African nations who boycotted because of New Zealand putting a rugby tour to South Africa. What can you do? But anyway, yeah, Montreal suffered for it. In 1980, the Olympics were in Moscow, but that was before, the Soviets' invasion of Afghanistan. Well, it was Soviets invading countries close to Olympic time. 66 nations boycotted the 1980 Games. The U.S. and Canada were the big ones. Great Britain actually allowed athletes to make the choice for themselves and all that. And they did pretty well at those Olympics. 80 nations were represented at the Moscow Games. In fact, it was the smallest in 6 Olympics. Basically, it was less publicized and less competitive, as Russia basically destroyed everyone in their path. All that. And yes, that is one of the reasons why Jimmy Carter lost the election in 1980. That basically Americans were upset that he didn't want to do all that. And the fact of the matter is, Carter used his muscle, quote unquote muscle, to get other countries to boycott, like Canada and Japan and all that. Gee, I wonder if any other president has used his muscle for financial gain. Yeah, I can guess that. Anyway, 1984, the Summer Olympics were in Los Angeles. The Soviet Union and many of their allies decided to boycott, take it back, and all that. Romania, surprisingly, even though they were part of the Eastern Bloc, decided to send their athletes to the 1984 Olympics and all that. And the LA Games made a profit, all that. There was 140 Olympic nations to take part in this thing. And China, this was the first time they actually participated in the Olympics. I didn't know that. I thought it was like 1972, but 84, wow. Canada did pretty well. I think they were 5th in the medal standings because of no Soviet nations. And basically, yeah, it was huge and all that in Los Angeles. The 1988 Games in Seoul, South Korea was known for its famous Olympic theme song, Hand in Hand. That was really well done by the Korean group. But unfortunately, it was controversial, mostly because this was the first games that really had drug tests take place and make the Olympic game, put it in the shadow of the Olympic Games. The games were well planned, but of course, drug tests were ruined, especially Ben Johnson of Canada and all that. It was not good and all that. But the 1988 Games also had some controversy, especially Roy Jones Jr. in the boxing. I mean, you could also say that Lennox Lewis's gold medal for Canada over Rick Bowe of the U.S. was tainted because the referee stopped the fight before it should have been stopped. And I agree with that philosophy. But anyway, Ben Johnson, notwithstanding, Roy Jones Jr. was cheated. He had the gold medal in reach when he beat his South Korean fighter opponent easily. Unfortunately, by a judge's vote of 3-2, um, Roy Jones got robbed. One of those three judges actually did say that he felt so confident. Oh no, sorry, that was someone. That was a scandal in '96 against Floyd Mayweather Jr. Yeah. So anyway, basically, the three judges who scored for South Korea were kind of close to being close to the Korean government. I forgot to mention in '72 about Berlin that the Americans got robbed of the gold medal in basketball by the Soviets. The Americans had won every gold medal in basketball up to that point. I have a hunch that the official, the FIBA, like the World Basketball guy, R. William Jones, actually tried to purposely make the Americans lose so that they wouldn't dominate, and then countries would probably not send their basketball teams to the thing. And the Americans kept winning. I think it was on purpose. But anyhow, in 1988, yeah, Roy Jones got screwed. Basically, Korean officials were accused of bribing judges and all that. Now, it was kind of a tit for tat move because in 1984, there was a Korean boxer, was it 84 or 88, who actually lost controversially and sat down in the middle of the ring for like an hour and all that. But Korea was upset and wanted the Americans to pay dearly for that. I think that was in '84. Shockingly enough, the '92 Barcelona games would see professionals as in NBA players. And the NBA sent American players, the Dream Team, in, and they just dominated. They didn't even take one freaking timeout in that series of events. A lot of people said that it was because, well, they got the professional, because the Americans didn't win the gold medal in '88, they took bronze. But anyway, the '92 games saw the reintroduction to the games of several smaller European countries that were incorporated in the Soviet Union, like Latvia, Lithuania, Georgia, and Kyrgyzstan. Vitaly Sherbil set the record for most individual gold medals at the Summer Olympics with 5. Now you say Mark Spitz, but yeah, 3 of Spitz's 7 gold medals were in team relays, team swimming relays. So basically, yeah, all that. There was a lot of corruption affecting the IOC's decision process. And basically, the process of choosing a game for the Summer Olympics was a commercial concern. And thus, Atlanta got it in 1996. As I said a few days ago about Ali's flame, and I talked about the Atlanta winning the '96 Olympics over Canada. I mean, the highlight was Michael Johnson's 200 and 400 meter double, which he broke both world records. Canadians saw Donovan Bailey win the gold medal at the 100 meters, just getting in under the world record time. And Canada shocking everyone by winning the 4x100 meter relay against the Americans. And it's, as I said, that's the first time the Americans lost the 4x100 meters without boycotting or being disqualified because of the baton. Anyway, it was emotional because of Ali lighting the Olympic torch. And of course, we all know about that bomb at Centennial Olympic Park, and the primary suspect was arrested in 2003. Sydney would host the Summer Olympics in 2000, which was amazing. Ian Forbes did well in the pool, and Kathy Freeman, who was an Indigenous Australian, actually won the gold out of the 400 meters. It was amazing and all that. Bringing Aboriginal Australians to the forefront. But there was also some courageous performances, such as Eric de Io Muzabani from Equatorial Guinea, who competed in the 100-meter freestyle swim in a terrible time and all that. He actually won the heat because his 2 opponents were disqualified for false starts. So he won the heat, but obviously he didn't compete. At the opening ceremonies, North and South Korea actually had a joint contingent, which was shocking. That was the first time Korea went in um, together. So that was huge in Australia. Of course, they still competed as different countries. But yeah, Australia was huge. Um, so yeah. And then 2004, the Olympics finally came back to Athens, the birthplace. $7 billion was spent on the games, including 1.5 billion on security. You can probably guess why. Anyway, Michael Phelps would put up 6 gold medals in these games. Ticket sales actually weren't as good as you thought they were. A third of tickets actually failed to sell. So, IOC President Jacques Rocque said that Greece's organization was outstanding and its security precautions were flawless. And all 202 countries with Olympic committees actually competed with over 11,000 participants. Unfortunately for Greece, a couple of their star athletes ended up getting in a car crash in a sense. But it was revealed that they both missed drug testing and basically would have been disqualified. So basically, that was a shame. Beijing would host the Summer Olympics in 2008. It was shocking and all that because of how China's human rights records were. Weird as it sounded, they actually added BMX into the games. It was weird. So it was amazing. Michael Phelps would break Mark Spitz record for most gold medals with 8 in one games with 8. And basically tied the record for most gold medals combined by a single competitor. Usain Bolt actually came out of the games winning the gold medals in the 100 and 200 meters quite easily, I feel. Yeah, China did a good job hosting the Olympics and all that. They've always come so close to hosting it. London would would win the bid for the 2012 Summer Games, becoming the first city to host it 3 times. It was happy and glorious. Great Britain won 29 gold medals, the most since 1908. And the Americans finally got back to the top of the medal table. The IOC controversially got rid of baseball and softball from the 2012 games, but moving them on to 2020. The London Games were successful because they were the first in history to completely sell every ticket, and there was over 1 million applications for tickets for the opening ceremony and the 100-meter male sprint final. Such was the demand for tickets for all the rules of each event that there was controversy over seats being set aside for sponsors and national delegations, which went unused. But they reallocated the tickets and all that. Unfortunately, the day after London won the bid for the 2012 Summer Games, there was a bomb in London. Like, there was a bomb attack in London. So basically, France didn't claim responsibility, but some people said that it was by French terrorists because of London winning the Olympics over Paris. I doubt that highly, but anyway, yeah. 2016, the last Summer Games before Tokyo hosted it in 2016, becoming the first South American city to host the Olympics. Unfortunately, there were lots of controversies. The political instability of Brazil's federal government, the economic crisis in Brazil, health and safety concerns with the Zika virus, and actually pollution near some big waters. And a state-sponsored doping scandal involving Russia, which basically affected the participation of its athletes, having to be part of the athletes of Russia, the Olympic athletes of Russia, or for short, OAR. Yeah, Brazil, it was like they did so well, but then, everything was poorly planned, especially for the 2014 World Cup happening. So anyway, Tokyo gets the Olympics in 2021, and thankfully they're going to go ahead of plan. But there won't be spectators, and a state of emergency in Tokyo. So yeah, so there's a lot of events going on and all that. The all-time medal table sees the Americans based on gold beating the Soviet Union slash Russia for second, and then Great Britain third, China fourth, France fifth. Canada is 20th. Well, it's gold medals, but at least Canada's up there. The Americans have won the medal table 17 times. The Soviets 7 times. France had the medal leader once. Great Britain, Germany, and China. France went. When did France? 1904? Oh, 1900. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, it's amazing. Well, there are rumors circulating around that in 2032, the Olympics are going to be held in Australia. As I said, 2024 will be in Paris, 2028 will be in Los Angeles, and then 2032, because they said that there weren't many good bids for the 2032 games. So Brisbane will bring Australia the Summer Olympics for the first time in 32 years. So you can bank on that. So anyway, that's great, and that's all I've got to say about the Summer Olympics. It's a fun event, and let's hope Canada does well and get in the top 10 in medals. I might be wrong, but I've been wrong before. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do